How often do you catch yourself thinking that the people living under the same roof as you are nothing more than masks? We are used to believing that our loved ones are an open book, whose pages we have turned hundreds of times. But what if there are chapters in that book that were intentionally glued shut? What if behind a door you pass every single day lies an abyss capable of swallowing your reality? My name is Merriwart. Until recently, I considered my grandfather Henry to be the most ordinary, even boring man. He was a quiet watchmaker who spent his entire life surrounded by gears, springs, and the steady ticking of mechanisms. He loved perfect order, absolute silence, and always stuck to a rigid daily routine. But what I discovered in his basement just a week after his funeral made me doubt not only him but my own memory as well. If you still think skeletons in the closet is just a pretty metaphor from thrillers, I ask you, watch this video until the very end. The truth I found turned out to be far colder and more terrifying than any fiction. My grandfather lived in this old Victorian house for almost 50 years. This massive dark brick building always seemed a bit gloomy to me, yet cozy. When Henry passed away, the house was left to me in his will. Sorting through a deceased person's belongings is no easy task, especially when every object is soaked in the scent of old wood and childhood memories. But there was one area in this house that was always strictly forbidden: the basement. Grandfather always kept the massive oak door secured with a heavy steel lock. He claimed that only old spare parts, corrosive reagents, and dangerous tools were kept there. Things that could harm anyone who didn't know how to handle them. 3 days after moving in, I decided it was time to put things in order. I took an angle grinder and with cold composure, cut the lock that hadn't been opened in decades. I expected to see piles of dusty junk, old boxes, and cobwebs. But instead I found something entirely different. The entire basement was lined with huge tool racks, but one of them stood strangely. When I accidentally brushed it with my shoulder, the rack didn't wobble. It slid smoothly to the side, as if on invisible rails. Behind it was a false wall. One cautious push and the partition moved, revealing a passage into a small, perfectly clean room that no living soul knew existed. The air inside was sterile and cold. In the very center of the room stood an old but perfectly polished operating table. And on the shelves along the walls, there, neatly arranged in alphabetical order, were hundreds of glass jars filled with clear formaldehyde. I stepped closer and my heart literally skipped a beat. My breath caught. In each jar were personal items: wedding rings, children's hairpins with remnants of ribbons, broken glasses, wristwatches, and neatly snipped locks of hair of every possible color. On the edge of the table lay my grandfather's old leather diary. With trembling hands, I opened the first page, hoping to see clockwork blueprints. But there were no diagrams. There were dates, exact addresses, and detailed descriptions of the names of people who had been officially listed as missing in our city over the last 40 years. My grandfather didn't just repair watches. He believed he was the one who had the right to stop other people's time. He chose his victims and kept their belongings in these jars as trophies, freezing moments of their lives forever. In that moment, as I stood in that icy silence, realizing the scale of the horror, I heard a faint, barely audible creak of floorboards upstairs. In a hollow house where I was supposed to be completely alone, real terror gripped my blood. I suddenly realized, grandfather wasn't the only one who knew the secret of this room. He had an accomplice. And judging by the direction of the sound and the heavy footsteps, this person had just entered the house and was heading straight for the basement door. I miraculously managed to escape through a tiny ventilation window near the ceiling just seconds before the basement door swung open. A massive investigation is underway now. Every day, the police find more and more horrifying details of the quiet watchmaker's double life. But the scariest part of this whole story isn't the secret room or even the diary. The scariest thing is that my grandfather's accomplice was never found. His identity remains a mystery. And now, sometimes when I close my eyes to sleep, I hear the steady ticking of hundreds of clocks in the darkness. It reminds me that someone's time can stop at any moment, and that someone might be watching you from the shadows right now. Take care of yourselves and never ignore the closed doors in the homes of your loved ones. Perhaps they are locked for a reason. Subscribe to the channel to find out where this investigation leads, and what other secrets this old house hides.